In mid-May of 2025, my wife, dad, dog, and I all took a trip up to our off-grid property for a weekend of projects. To catch you up if you're new, in January of 2025, my wife and I purchased 40 acres of remote land in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, or UP. One of the best features of the property is the small creek that wanders through almost the entire property. Courtesy of the previous landowner, the property had some trails, a boardwalk, a cabin that needed a lot of work, and what seemed like everything that the owner had ever bought for the land left behind, mostly in the form of trash. As an homage to our favorite song of ours, and where the cabin sits at the fork in the creek, we named the land Middle Fork. And this is our journey of building up Middle Fork. It was a gorgeous spring day in May when we arrived at the property, all hands and paws ready for work. The first thing that I wanted to check was the creek. Now look at the difference here that only 2 weeks makes in the water level at the same spot. With just a few quick repairs, the boardwalk was ready for action and we got to work carrying our building supplies across. This trip had 2 main goals. Number 1, build a sleeping loft with a ladder, and number 2, build an outhouse structure. Number 2, get it? We decided to divide the work a bit, as 3 people working on a loft in a 180 square foot cabin quickly enters the too many cooks in the kitchen status. I decided to tackle the loft build, while my dad and wife got to work building the outhouse. Alright, we just got to the cabin. Just want to do a before view of the back area, because this is where the loft is going to go. So that's what it looks like right now. Zoom out. For the loft, I went with ledger board framing and joist hangers, as it's relatively easy to do by yourself. I started by putting up the 2x6 ledger boards on the back 3 walls. I installed these with 2 4.5-inch ledger lock structural screws on each end of the board, screwed right into the studs. Big challenge here is to make sure that the height is consistent across each ledger board and that they're all level. Alright, got the framing for the loft all done. 6 foot by about 9 foot. Now I'm going to pound in a bunch of these 3-inch ring shank pole barn nails. Bang a couple of those into each studs. Right now it's got the 4.5-inch ledger screws in it, so those are going to be really strong, but we'll bang the nails in and then we'll be ready to start joist hangers. Seeing as I had to clear my stovepipe and leave 6 inches minimum from my 90-degree stove elbow to any combustible material, the bottom of my ledger boards was set at about 7 foot 3 inches. This should give a ton of headroom under the loft as well, which is way better than always needing to duck or feeling cramped. Next came the joist hangers. I was spanning around 5 foot 8 inches and I had 5 floor joists, so with that my spacing ended up being around 13 inches on center with my 2x6s.
Alright, left hand hammer.
You can see me just checking the height of this floor joist with a spare chunk of 2x6.
That's good.
Here I'm measuring the span of the floor joists. This cabin isn't exactly the most square building I've ever seen, and the span varied about 2.5 inches between the very back joist and this joist more toward the middle of the building.
110 and a half. 110 and a half.
Cut these almost on the long side too, because I'd rather have to like jam them or cut them down than have them be too short after the roof debacle of last trip.
Had I just cut them all the exact same as my smallest one, some of my joists would have ended up being way too short. Measuring takes some time, but it's definitely worth it.
Stay right there. Oh god. It's gonna fall. I just need to... It's gonna hit me right in the head. Nope. Saved my last couple of brain cells.
First board is up.
I'm just gonna go make sure that that's level. That is not the top of the ladder. Cool. Alright. Okay. Sweet.
Then it was really just copy and paste for the rest of the joists. And one random note here, I had pulled something in my back the previous week, so I was moving real carefully this whole day.
I've been cutting these so close that I gotta lift up the one end and then it falls in, so that's good. So I just lift that up so I can leverage the other side a little bit and pull it down. That's how you want the joist to fit. All the floor joists are up. Got 5, they're spaced about 13 inches on center, because that's just the run that I had. 3-inch ring shank pull bar nails holding them all up. Yeah.
Next in the order of operations came the loft floor. Instead of using a plywood material, I decided to go with boards. These are 2x10 boards. These are really strong, they're really sturdy, and I just think that they look a lot better from underneath the loft than plywood. My back was unfortunately starting to give me some issues, so I had to call in the big guns to pound these floorboards in. Thanks, Dad.
Well, I think we can do the ladder tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that should be no big deal.
Finally getting the mattress moved up to the loft was such a huge win for this cabin. Prior to this, it's basically just been permanently in the way and it always needs to be moved around. Plus, by adding a 9-foot by 6.5-foot loft, we had basically added a third more square footage to the cabin. Into building this small, it makes a huge difference. Plus, with these tall ceilings, it just looks like it was always meant to be there. The other big benefit of getting the loft up is that we were able to move this futon into place for a more permanent living area setup. Perfect height for looking out the window.
Hot spot.
Well, that works.
Do you like the futon?
This setup seems to be dog approved. Later that evening, we checked out the small pond near the cabin. I might have to get a little kayak to paddle around back here eventually. And just before bed, we heard some really cool bird songs. Back in the cabin, after the dawn bird walk, we warmed up with a fire and some hot coffee. As the day started to get warmer though, it was time to get to work. My quest today was to build a ladder for the loft, and I really wanted to use logs from the property for the supports. So I had to go off and find nice dry, standing dead trees, cut them to length, cut the correct angle, peel all the bark off, and add the treads. While I was doing that, my dad and wife started to work on the outhouse. The outhouse is actually going to be built around this Sunmar Excel NE composting toilet, NE meaning no electricity. Now this toilet's basically just been sitting here for most of the year, so step one was to clean out all the lovely compost from the previous landowner. A nice composting toilet like this costs a heck of a lot more than digging a hole in the ground, but since it was already here on the property, we figured we might as well use it. The first step here was to get a level foundation for these concrete pavers. Then we had some pressure-treated 2x4s that were going to double up into the supports. Next, measure, mark, and place the 2 extra floor supports. Like the loft, we're just using joist hangers for the 2 supports. After the base is all done, the flooring went on. We used 5/8 treated deck boards for the floor, like you would just a normal deck or porch. Now this is the first time that my wife, Rachel, has ever built anything. She's extremely eager to learn how to DIY and has been itching to get her hands on with this project really since we bought the land. Little does she know, my dad and I more or less make everything up as we go, so she's learning from the best here. Now a structure like this, with a level foundation, floor joists, flooring, walls, and a roof, is the perfect project to start on. Framing an outhouse is no different than framing anything else, it's just a little bit smaller. This is advice that I would give to anyone looking to learn how to build a cabin. Just start small, but use the same basic principles. If you can build an outhouse, a woodshed, tool shed, anything like that, it translates directly to a cabin, even a house. It's all the same, it's just a matter of scale. We knew very, very little about composting toilets prior to inheriting one with the property. But through reading the manuals, we learned that this drain tube needs to be lower than where it comes out the back of the toilet. This means notching the bottom framing so that it can sit right on the floor, then run downhill after. Now, I'm not exactly sure what would happen if this weren't correct, but when dealing with a toilet, I'd rather not roll the dice and find out.
Nice and flat.
Eventually, the roof went up. We reused the old skylight out of the cabin. Having a clear roof makes this space nice and bright. Honestly, there's just nothing worse than a pitch black, dingy outhouse. You can also see that the vent pipe is installed here, though currently just running up where there isn't a roof. We need to buy another part or two in order to install that pipe more permanently. A couple sheets of spare plywood went up on the walls, but then that was about good for the day on this project. Now back at the cabin, while Rachel and my dad had built an entire outhouse, I spent the entire day fighting with my ladder. Using logs from the property is undoubtedly cool, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. It'll make a one-of-a-kind rustic ladder that is 100% custom and hand-built. But working with logs isn't like building a ladder out of 2x4s. These trees bend, twist, and they're not totally straight. They're not even the same diameter. Because of this, each rung of the ladder required a custom measurement and angle. I used the circular saw to cut a bunch of notches, and then I knocked those pieces out with my oscillating tool. Eventually, I even had to take the chainsaw to a few of these to make everything fit together correctly. I spaced the steps about 12 inches apart and made the ladder treads 18 inches wide. This project was pretty difficult, with custom cuts on everything, uneven work surfaces, round logs that just wanted to roll all over the place. But an added difficulty was that using the circular saw and the oscillating tool as much as I was, I just kept draining my batteries. I've got one battery charger running off the solar setup, but I was constantly swapping between my 3 batteries, on and off the charger, getting enough juice to make some cuts, that battery dying, so on and so forth. So that slowed things down too. Eventually though, I had all 7 rungs of the ladder on, and I went to place it in the cabin. Now here, I could very easily just visually see how one of the logs twisted and was going to make it pretty difficult to mount the ladder. After nearly a full day of working on this thing, I just had to spend a little time laying on the ground here.
Hi.
After some burgers and fresh perspective from my wife and dad, we were able to hard mount this ladder. I used 6-inch long timber lock structural screws. They went all the way through the logs and into the building framing by quite a bit. Once 3 of these screws were in, that ladder would survive a hurricane. The final quick project that I wanted to do in the loft area was to add another of the small windows that we installed when we did the roof. These are 14 inches wide by 32 inches tall, and they fit right between the studs. With the roof skylight removed and the loft up, it was important to get a little bit more light into the cabin. Plus, being able to open a window up in the loft is really important for airflow.
I'm gonna take every Phillips screw that's here and throw them away.
The rest of the final day was spent cleaning up the property, enjoying the scenery, and honestly just kind of taking it pretty easy. It was only the second weekend of May, but it was a hot day. As a reminder, this is all left over from the previous owner, but now it's our responsibility to clean the land up. We're longtime campers and backpackers who tend to live by a leave it better than you found it principle, so we're no strangers to clean up. But man, there's a lot of trash here. I was also so tired of this bright orange cement mixer being in every single picture and drone video of the cabin, so we made some room and finally wheeled it away from the cabin toward the parking area.
I just want to make sure it's safe to use.
Now at this point, the interior of the cabin is really starting to come together and feel like a cozy, comfortable area instead of a shack. We're also starting to see what the next projects are pretty naturally.
Oh, she's cooking.
Here's what we hope to tackle over the rest of early summer and midsummer. Now, not having a dedicated kitchen space, countertop cabinets, shelves, and a sink is causing food and anything cooking related to just spread all over the entire cabin anywhere there's a flat surface, so a kitchen build is in the near future. We're all pretty darn sick of looking at Tyvek siding all the time, so finishing the exterior, putting some covering on would be great. The cabin is also just begging for a nice covered front porch. And after sweating in the heat all day, I'm planning a nice off-grid shower build. All this and so much more to come as we continue building up Middle Fork.